The Israeli army continues to ravage the Gaza Strip with airstrikes, as you all know, in preparation for a possible ground attack. It is a potential risk to send troops into a city from the ground. First of all, it is necessary to weaken the city's defenses with the designated targets and minimize its logistical support and prepare the ground for a ground operation. This is exactly what is happening. He said that the full siege in the region, which left the Palestinians desperate for food, fuel and medicine, would continue until Hamas militants released about 150 hostages. There is a great mobilization in the Israeli army this morning, and in the videos from the civilians shared on social media, a large army is ready and waiting at the blockaded Gaza border. Within 24 hours, 1.1 million people will be evacuated from Gaza. Let's examine it all together. The Middle East is still experiencing crucial hours. Israel has been making excellent use of its air force in response to attacks from Hamas and Hezbollah. There are 589 planes, 191 helicopters, and 32 AVs in the Israeli armed forces. From this arsenal, 60 Israeli jets have begun today destroying Hamas targets with devastating efficiency. The vast majority of this Air Force's planes are fixed 16s. Militant groups supported by Iran are suffering high casualties as a result. In response to the Hamas offensive, the Israeli Air Force has recently conducted over 200 attacks in the Rimal and Khan Yunis regions of Gaza. According to reports, many Hamas militants and pieces of military equipment were destroyed in these attacks. Hamas's strikes are mostly planned in the cities of Rimal and Khan Yunis. As a result of these attacks, one of Hamas's primary offices was destroyed by Israeli F-16 fighter planes. The Israeli Air Force's Karnov and Shimshan transport planes were in the process of flying Israeli soldiers stationed abroad in. Israel has been collecting its forces in preparation for a much more severe reaction to the Hamas strikes. The operation to destroy the Hamas government compound continues, while the IDF targeted the extremist group's deployment sites in the Gaza Strip. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned of generational retribution for the atrocity that took place last Saturday. Meanwhile, the Hof Ashkelon Regional Council issued a statement saying that law enforcement and military personnel engaged in gunfire near the Trans-Israel pipeline junction to the south of the coastal city. Israel's top military spokesman, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, has stated that targeting senior Hamas officials is a top priority while these catastrophic strikes continue. Israeli troops are operating on the ground in case the militant organizations decide to relocate, while Israel's 60 fighter jets are striking targets, mainly in the Gaza Strip. A furious Israeli air and ground offensive is being launched against Hamas militants and the support efforts of Hezbollah. Israel has already begun to feel the effects of this sustained effort to exert pressure on it. IDF aircraft reportedly carried out an attack that resulted in the death of prominent Hamas Politburo member Zakaria Abu Momer. He was in charge of Hamas's National Affairs Office and had a close relationship with the group's leader, Yahya Sinwar. This crushing defeat dealt a serious blow to Hamas. As a result, the Israeli soldiers felt more confident and the fighting escalated. This is what Tel Aviv sought, to get rid of Hamas and Hezbollah militants from its territory and put an end to the fighting. Israel wasn't the only country affected. The United States stands with Israel and is prepared to deploy additional troops to the Middle East if required. Vice President Joe Biden said again today. The President of the United States issued a strong warning to other nations and international organizations not to exploit the deterioration of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Meanwhile, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has called the conflict between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip very serious, and he has issued a warning about the conflict's potential impact on regional security and stability. Cairo is making further efforts to broker a truce. For a rapid end to violence and de-escalation, el-Sisi said they are in touch with all international and regional parties. After Hamas's unexpected strike on Israel, German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock urged the Palestinian Authority to reject terrorism. Israel chose to increase the scope of its operation against Hamas after hearing these declarations and calls for peace, in order to bolster the protection of rural areas and settlements. The IDF has begun delivering thousands of rifles to civilian security groups and defense networks around the nation. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant announced the start of a major attack against the Gaza Strip after these preparations were made. On the Gaza border, General Gallant said that all restrictions had been withdrawn. After making this pivotal move, Israeli soldiers claim to have retaken the region, particularly in the south. Hamas took action at the same time as Israel's military operation proceeded. Hamas militants have threatened to launch an attack on the Israeli city of Ashkelon in retaliation for Israel's bombing of Gaza. Many loud explosions could be heard around the city after this announcement. At Ashkelon, Hamas launched massive rockets. The city had never before experienced such a devastating assault. Due to the bombing, air raid sirens went off in this area and others in the vicinity. The intensity of the strikes from both sides in the conflict region increased rapidly, making it difficult to keep up with them and report them in real time. The Gaza Strip is yet another case in point. In the Gaza City neighborhood of Furqan, Israeli airstrikes hit more than 100 targets. According to the IDF, Hamas recruits and trains its attackers in this area. Hundreds of fighter planes took part in the enormous attacks. The IDF also destroyed a tunnel used to smuggle weapons and terror equipment between Egypt and Gaza's Rafah region. After all these shocking incidents, a common question circulated throughout the world's media. Why is Hamas planning attacks on Israel? Iran wants to stop this from happening and claims that a U.S. security guarantee for the Saudis will be a crucial aspect of the U.S.-led negotiations on a normalization agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. It is incredibly difficult for Riyadh to continue these diplomatic negotiations in light of the Hamas offensive that provoked the tragic Palestinian-Israeli bloodshed. Because of this, Iran is the most likely candidate. The scope of the attack, on the other hand, makes it highly likely that Israel would invade Gaza on the ground in order to oust Hamas from power. It is believed that Hamas is willing to make this sacrifice in order to gain Tehran's favor. Nonetheless, it is quite likely that one of the primary purposes of the attack was to bring attention to the plight of the Palestinian people. If this were the only element at play, then it is difficult to understand why Hamas would escalate the violence of previous attacks when they know that Israel's response will result in Hamas losing control of Gaza. Hamas had a number of other options available to it that would not have put its political standing in jeopardy that it might have pursued in order to garner the attention it desired. Repeatedly initiating bombing raids or rocket strikes against the target could have been one way to worsen the problem, while remaining within the terms of the agreement. Even the accusation of retaliation or revenge brought forward by Hamas fits into this category. It is quite improbable that Hamas would launch such a complicated and well-coordinated attack on this scale without first contemplating the possible outcomes. As a consequence of this, it is possible that Hamas's strike was planned with the primary intention of provoking an Israeli invasion and removing Hamas from power in Gaza. In the same way, dismissing the support of the United States would be the worst possible move for either Hamas or Hezbollah in Lebanon to make at this point. Already present in the region is the United States Navy. The United States Navy ship Gerald R. Ford is the most known example of this. In addition, the largest aircraft carrier in the world is on its way to the war zone in an effort to assist in defusing the situation. You can see that the hostile climate that exists between Hamas and Hezbollah will, owing to Israel and the support it receives from the United States, become less intense over the course of time. Both Hezbollah, which Lebanon and the Iranian government are supporting, and Hamas, which Iran is attempting to exploit, will suffer as a direct consequence of this development. We are grateful that you have been keeping up with us.